Hi everyone. Hi. So my name's Adrian. I currently work for a council, and I just want to our council, and I just want to make sure that what I'm saying is just my personal point of view, and I don't represent the council in any particular way during this presentation. So, but I'd really like to thank the council and for putting on this conference, which is great. Yeah, I'm as confused as you, seriously. But anyway, moving on. Anyway, and all right. So, thanks for coming. This is the organisation that we built. It's just a couple of activists put this together after we got the first council in the world to declare a climate emergency, which was Darabin, and we thought we'd have a space to create this stuff. So just if you could, hi everybody. I thought it was going to be 3 people here. I'm now slightly stressed, but anyway. Okay. I think it's gone to Zoom. Yeah. Yeah, totally. I'm just trying to work out. Is it in Zoom? It's, I don't know, just we're finishing call 2. Yeah. This was working. There we go. All right. So thanks for coming along. So what we're going to be looking at is climate emergency mobilisation deep dive. All right. And firstly, I just want to acknowledge, and I should get all this Zoom stuff off. So it looks like I'm doing Zoom administration as well as speaking, which is just great. Anyway, multitasking. So I just want to acknowledge Philip Sutton, who passed a couple of years ago, and Philip literally worked himself to death for the climate on behalf of all of us. He was an amazing thinker. He saw things very clearly, saw things very systemically. He was one of the people that was involved in the whole idea of getting the climate emergency concept going with David, as David said earlier today. Philip joined myself, Tiffany, who's in the room, and a guy called Paul Cutler, who's now retired safely in Tassie, so good on Paul. He, in developing this concept of focusing in on councils back in about, was it 2012 or 2013? Yeah, 2013. And so the idea was state and federal government are heavily connected to fossil fuel industries one way or another. It's hard for them, being one of the top fossil fuel export countries in the world, to break away from that. So we thought, where can we get some wins? And we thought we could get some wins at local council. And Philip was one of the thinkers, and Tiffany and myself and Paul developing the sort of first model for climate emergency action by councils all the way back in 2013. It took us 3 more years or thereabouts of campaigning, and accidentally trapping Trent in his car in the council car park. And I did that because the council changed their parking permits, put the parking permit on my street, right? So I had to go to the council building to get one, and because I didn't have a driveway at that point. And then I'm about to leave. Trent pulls in. I jump out of my car, do the block, and then we had the discussion, and we talked about it because we'd been talking with the councillors pre-election, and they seemed keen, and they all got elected, and we thought, well, what could they do to do it? And so the original idea was you would do an acknowledgement of the climate emergency, right? So we're acknowledging all this stuff that we're seeing today. The final bit, the declaration, was when a council went into full emergency mode, which is what I'm going to be talking about. Now, Yarra copied straight away, as Yarra does. I'm joking, Yarra. Yarra copied straight away, so we got them on board. But then they put that massive, huge, did people see that huge banner on the front of their building? That was the biggest climate emergency thing that happened for a long time, right? It's out there, it's on one of their, on the town hall. And I think it's still there today. I took a photograph at least a year ago when I went past, and it's still there. And that's saying it loud and proud, and goes back to that communication piece that I was talking about way earlier. All right, so Yarra did it. My partner in crime, Bryony, got Vincent and in WA. And then Philip was talking to the Americans for a long time. Americans got Trump elected. Americans got very depressed. We said, why not local government? They had a meeting with me and Brian, and we talked to them for 2 hours. They didn't hear from them, and suddenly we got Hoboken and Montgomery, and then they got Los Angeles, and then it went around the world, right? So it became a thing with a sense of momentum. The whole point was, though, it was meant to end up in this mobilisation thing that I'm going to talk about, because that's what we actually need to do to not, let's be blunt, not die, right? Like that, it's literally that for us and the next generation, okay? So we need to do that in order to, and what's our goal? It is to reverse global warming, yeah? Because are we already too hot? Yeah. So I explained this at my council using pugs, right? I have a pug with too many blankets. I say to the staff, how do we make the pug better? And everyone gets this. You take the blankets off the pug, right? Like it's that simple. And that's where we're at with climate change. And explaining things in really simple metaphors helps people understand the concept, in ways that they can relate to. All right, so just acknowledgement of Philip and his great work. And all right, so we're going to talk to the why, because very quickly, but why? Because if you don't understand why you're doing something, you don't know what you're doing, right? So you got to understand the why. Then we're going to say can we do it? Like, is it a possible thing? And what does it mean? And we're going to do that with these wonderful guests here. And you're all going to introduce yourselves, because I'm concussed and I'm dyslexic. So yeah, I just got to hand to them, because I'll be calling you get what I mean. So, all right.
Councillor Judy Wyatt, Mayor of North City Council. I'm not concussed today, but I'm exhausted.
Exhausted. Okay, that's all right.
I'm Councillor Isabel Tolhurst, Mayor of the Borough of Queensland.
And I'm Mark Geller, the CEO of the Borough of Queensland.
So hopefully with this, and people in the audience as well, but let's make this an engaging, ongoing discussion, that we can hopefully pick out some insights that what are going to be the hurdles, what's going to stop us, how we can drive through them, and what are the circumstances that we need to actually get to where we got to go. Like, it's sort of the idea. All right, and then questions. And originally it was QW because my keyboard had broken, but then it would just be questions, of course. All right. So, oh, have I? God. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, you could. Where's the people? Chat.
No, is it admit? The blue button.
Oh, there. I got it. All right. Hello, people.
Sorry about
Hi.
that.
Sorry. All right. So just really simply, just to recap what David was talking about, and this is an old graph from Breakthrough and the stuff that David used to use. But we are on track somewhere between the 3 and 4 degrees mark, right? That is where we're going. It's not the hypothetical, that's the actual. And where theoretically our best case scenario is possibly going to be that red line if we work really, really hard to achieve it. And we're going to have to deal with all those impacts. So those impacts, so we're going to get, I was speaking to Brendan Mackey, because Griffith Uni's running a council focused climate course thing. That they just started this week, I think. And I was meant to go, but what happened to me? I got concussed anyway. So talking to Brendan Mackey in the lead up to that, and we're going to get the same temperature rise that we've had over the last 20 years in the next 10, right? And the events that we see today are going to exponentially increase. So the fires, floods, storms, freak weather events, whatever, will exponentially get worse, and they're going to get worse over a double the warming sort of vibe. So we've got to go the red line. Ideally, we'd go the yellow line. So that's the why we need to do this. All right. Okay. So now look, there we go. And I really like this. Is another old Breakthrough slide. And the bottom line is, we're aiming for that 3 to 4 sort of level. 3 is outright chaos. 4 is literal Mad Max, like of the movies, right? So we just do not want to go there, as best people can say. So we've all got, I would argue, a moral, ethical, and utterly selfish motive to get this right. Yeah, okay? Okay. So why councils? And there's someone in the room on that. So, and I love this picture, because this was the councillors from Darebin just after they declared the first emergency, and they're all pretty happy and they all look pretty sane. Well, ish, and it just says to me that councils are the space where we can actually do this, because the people are actually people, right? And it gives us a chance. Politicians are a different sort of person. A lot of them, yeah, like a couple of my friends are politicians, and you know, one guy who I know from the army who's in the Liberal Party was telling me that climate change didn't exist because he had to tell me that climate change didn't exist. If you want a pre-selection for a winnable seat, he has to say that, right? So, and he's a smart person. He's not stupid, but he literally argued me if he actually believed what he was saying. Like it did sound like it. I said, dude, anyway. So councils are the chance, all right. And so if just one council goes into full emergency mode, what's going to happen? Ultimately, what happened with the climate emergency declaration?
Other councils will follow.
Thank you. Other councils will follow. The community will push other councils. They'll push each other, and we will get this chain reaction that went across the world that now encompasses thousands of councils and governments and state governments. Even the UN, the Pope declared climate emergencies, but instead we'll go into emergency mode. Now the thing is, it's not as we worked out. Has anyone seen the How to Start a Movement TED Talk? Yeah, and so it's the guys dancing on the hill. What is the most important number in that from memory?
The second.
I would argue not, right? I'm doing the counter. I said you need the second or you go down. But when did the movement start? No? Yeah, you got the one. We've got one.
The one that joined the second.
No, it's about 6, right? It's about 6. So slowly it built up. Watch it again. And at 6, it just goes kawoomfa, right? And it escalates out. So we actually will need 6 councils to play, right? 6 councils. So, and that's sort of what happened exactly with our declarations. Okay, so it's just giving you some things. All right, so I just said that. Okay. Oh, the other really obvious poor thing is, and sort of, I was in a 3 weeks before COVID started, I was brought into Darebin Council, sat down with perhaps the mayor, perhaps the CEO, and told under no circumstances could the council ever enter emergency mode at all. Bam. All right. 3 weeks later, right? 3 weeks later, have I got the picture? Oh, there we go. There's $10 million on the table for coronavirus. There's an entire community mail out. The offices have been shut down, staff have been redirected. There are business programs, community support programs, blah, 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 blah. All right. So do we know that councils can actually enter emergency mode? What is the answer, everyone? Yes, it is, right? We know that, and COVID is the exemplar of it, okay? So we know that. All right, so, okay. There we go. Oh, I'm going backwards, sorry. That's my, God knows, dyslexia and, sorry, I keep using that, it's terrible. All right, thanks, Jude. Jude's got it. All right. Oh, yeah, and there's all the infographics and all that sort of stuff beforehand. All right. So how would a council get there? There are actually quite a number of models. I think a lot of them have been taken off the original material that we did as Case and Philip did as well. But there's some European ones, a Scottish one, Darebin's got a version. And by the way, do you know who helped write the first climate emergency plan? So it was Darebin staff had done a plan and we got leaked it and Philip and I rewrote it, right? Philip doing 90% of the work and myself doing about 10 in consultation. And so we ghost wrote through the councillors back and forth under the channel. So sometimes to get things done, you've actually got to do interesting things, right? Like interesting things. Yeah, that Laura Joe did say who wrote the Darebin one, so you can tell her now. Anyway, so there's a guide on the Case website, there's some other guides. All right, but what it boils down to is essentially these 4 general concepts, and then we're going to go into the specific layers with panel, and we're going to discuss it, and we can discuss it with you guys. So inwards is obviously educating, inwards getting ELT buy-in, educating the CEO. If the CEO does not want to do it, is it going to happen? I throw to you. No, thank you, Mark. All right, no, bottom line, you've got to get the CEO on board, all right? Plus the staff, plus the other teams. Downwards, is getting the community fired up about it, right? Community engagement. So we're at Maribyrnong going to be using TAG as our lead, as our the climate adaptation game. We're going to be doing that to get community engaged around climate change. And the more they get engaged, the more they're going to put pressure on whom to act. Council, right? So it becomes a positive feedback loop, just like climate change. Sideways, that's councils putting pressure on other councils. That's pretty obvious. And we do that through our WAGAs and our NAGAs and MAVs and our national organisations, et cetera, and CAEs. And ultimately, the ultimate goal is, can councils save the world by themselves? No. So who we're going to put pressure on? State and Fed, right? So we're helping to do that. All right. Okay. and away we go. So we've got, this is what I've divided up the sort of steps. And this is going to be revised by the end of this talk, people. So just be careful with taking those photographs, right? We're going to have a new and improved version. This is the old original version. I think I sat down with Martin. Yeah, did. Okay, I did. Long time ago, just before COVID. And COVID for me was really tragic because it meant I couldn't get down to Queenscliff again. And did we go into full emergency mode in Queenscliff?
We did declare,
You did clear full
After-
emergency mode.
well, we declared an emergency.
We declared, I was there for that. Did we go into emergency mode?
Oh, sorry, did we go?
Yeah. No,
we got
okay,
the-
so we didn't quite get it. I reckon we were the closest we've ever been in the world, right? So maybe we can do a part 2 next time. Do we have a CEO that's on side for chance?
We might.
Okay, all right, okay, good. Sorry, pressure. So, all right. Oh, look, there's the people who are with me. Hey, all right. So, look down, we're going backwards again. Sorry. All right. Oh, and just a bit of context. I just thought this is Jude put one of these up, but it's just that risk map. And you can see that and what do we know of these risks? Are they overestimates or underestimates of reality? They're massively underestimates, right? So there's another great graph at the National Adaptation Conference that had all the fire predictions out to 2100 and they were dots. And the bigger the dot, the bigger the fire. And then they overlaid the 2019 20 fires. And they were like, I don't know, 10 times bigger than the biggest dot on all of the predictions that were ever done. So we massively underestimate stuff, okay? So it will be much worse. All right, so let's have a look at the acknowledgement. So first thing we do is, the original idea is we acknowledge a climate emergency and we hold off on the declaration until we pretty much get up to the end of point 9, all right? Sadly, when we gave it to the Americans, after that 2-hour meeting, they didn't really talk to us. They changed the language and often they went and they declared everything where we were getting acknowledgements first. It was meant to be a 2-step process. And it was meant to reflect the actual act of declaring an emergency like we did with what thing that happened? The big thing? COVID, yeah, like COVID, like we declared an emergency. So we start off with acknowledgement. Has everyone done that acknowledgement at their councils? We're all past that first step. Excellent. All right. So the next thing is you need at least, look, did anyone have any trouble with acknowledgement? Jude's come from Knox.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely. And we did follow that rule where it was an acknowledgement to begin with. Although I think the first iteration was stating the state of climate change. So it's actually had multiple iterations before it got to acknowledge and then declaration. However, understanding that piece, I think that's where we get the blocker. So even the people that have to vote on it don't understand that piece.
That it's just the acknowledgement
Yeah.
at this point,
Yeah.
rather than the
Yeah,
full
because so
mobilisation.
many other things come into the conversation and cloud their ability to clearly understand the process.
Yeah, and one of the Maribyrnong councillors was saying that what she was saying in the early piece today was saying, what's the difference between acknowledgement and a declaration? And that's what it is. If that was the idea.
Yeah.
So what
And media
yeah.
picks up on this, right?
Yes.
Which is where I think that absolutely has an impact on councillor interpretation and impression of what we're doing.
Yep, totally. All right. Did anyone else have any stories about their acknowledgement they want to share? All good? Good with it. Did anyone help the council get acknowledged in their private capacity or anything like that?
Yes.
Yeah, Jane got a lot. So yeah, cool.
Prior to being on council,
Yeah,
I was
prior.
with Queensland Climate Action now.
Yeah, cool.
Not
Okay.
just climate action now.
There we go. So you can take the journey from activist to councillor and then there. Like,
Actually, Paula, just after they declared a climate emergency, and largely because they declared a climate emergency to help write their climate emergency action plan.
fantastic
Right.
news. Yeah, that's great.
Adrian, I don't want to jump in too much, but I was on Darren Council,
Yeah.
when we were first declared. I think we had no idea, the domino effect it would have, but I might talk about this later, but yeah, the big challenge we had was then getting a different council group next term and sort of deprioritisation, so yeah, we talk about that later.
Yes, and then let's talk about that under 6, which is community mobilisation. All right. So, all right, executive buy-in. So, do we all need executive buy-in to get stuff that we need done?
Yeah.
Right. It sort of goes without saying. Any comments? How's your experiences been with executive buy-in?
Yeah, no.
So, your executive and your CEO aren't that supportive of
Uh,
the climate emergency?
I'm being recorded.
Oh, okay, well, all right. Just.
Okay,
Yeah,
do it indirectly. It's amazing how many things, not just climate, CEOs pushed in. So they do not want to buy into things that are complex or difficult because they're trying to manage that balance. So you will find, and even when I was initially starting to think about it, is how much am I buying off here and how I'm going to manage that. And so it's so very easy for a CEO to say, well, we've got so many responsibilities, we've got this core set of activities we have to do, this legislation tells us to do it. We've got the three councillors that support it, two that don't, so what's the politics of it? So it's very easy for us to get mired down into the complexity of it rather than buying it. And I think
Yeah, thank you. To be fair, it is that competing policy objectives, competing priorities that really does, effectively disable or curb that buy-in. You can have 1, 2, 3 really passionate councillors. If it's not a very clear will of council, the person that the council employs is not necessarily going to get that level of buy-in that you necessarily need them to do. And then, as you say, they are responsible for an organisation that has so many different competing priorities. So, yep.
And it's interesting because I think you can get one level of buy-in that can get you up to level 4, which is your climate emergency plan. But then taking it that next step, like that, the full mobilisation is the next thing, which is a challenge in the separate campaign itself. So perhaps we'll discuss that a bit. Internal knowledge base build. I mean, this is really, really important in that people just don't get it, right? And so it can't be the domain of the sustainability staff. So we've got an internal education online system. When someone comes in, it's just about to be finished. So when people come in, they'll get a video to watch and some questions to answer. And we do that sort of thing at council as a matter of course. So whether it's risk assessment or computer security or gender issues or, whatever it is, there's a whole range of education that staff undertake to enable them to understand the environment. So it's really good to get that sort of stuff in, just so all staff start being exposed to this. But what I found interestingly working at a council is that there's lots and lots of people who have a sustainability bent in pretty much every team these days, because I think climate change is now broadly understood at least some level by a lot of people, and people want to do their bit. Okay, any thoughts or comments?
I just have the comment that a system that you've described is great if it's part of induction and every staff member in every department is exposed to it. But if they're not, then there's a question about knowledge retention and knowledge that's lost if people move on, which can undermine the executive buy-in, which can undermine action, etc. So I think that build and retention piece is really important.
And there's a huge churn at councils. I'm not sure about your ones, but yeah, it just seems to be this constant general flow of staff from one council to another. But in that sense, if you're constantly educating, then we're spreading that education across councils and people can see the ideas elsewhere as well.
Remembering though that the education piece really is just one of quite a number of checkboxes that they need to undertake. So you've got child safety standards, you've got a whole host of these things that on the training platform, pretty much they come across as equal. So why somebody would give any more attention to this than any other, it does become a bit of a checkbox exercise as opposed to necessarily having that education impact that you're looking for.
And it does. And if you're lucky and you're at our council, we also do an induction day. And unfortunately, I get given 15 minutes in that induction day. And I use it to the max.
They usually run.
No, they don't. They're all excited. But it's the one they remember because it's exciting, it's interesting, it's hopeful. Like you can never talk about the climate emergency without talking about absolute categoric terms we can save ourselves. Because if you don't link those two with some realistic solutions, people switch off and run away. Like that's just the basic link that you do. Sorry.
But I was going to say, I think you've said what Drew was saying, which is you need to elevate it. So it can't just be another one of the many things that we do. It needs to be, and that's that sense of urgency with the organisation.
Yeah, it's something a bit special.
You do all this, however, now we're going to spend 15 minutes with Adrian to tell us about how urgent this is.
Can
Yeah.
I add another one to that point?
Yep.
So one of the items, the actions in the LT, in the toolkit that Dale was talking about this before, is having a climate change consideration or something similar in your front reports that go to councillors. And having that included, so if councillors request something like that, or if the CEO is able to implement something like that, it does help officers realise the need for that training and to recognise that they actually have to understand what the implications are to then be able to report that back to councillors.
Yeah, and which is really important to get those KPIs and people managers positions and also those reporting tools. And Dale talks a lot about that reporting stuff. So everyone's familiar with the hands up if you do not know what the local government climate emergency toolkit is. Anyone? We're all familiar?
Everyone's downloaded
You've
it.
all downloaded it. Fantastic. You are one of the
Multiple
15,000 people who've downloaded it. Dale is doing he's doing his third or fourth iteration. On that door on the other side, as you walk out, turn around, point your phone at it, grab that URL, QR code sort of thing, and fill out a form to help him broaden that approach for that tool. So that's a really good tool as well. So yeah, so we're going to do something special, right? So anyway, a little bit of training, and the more training we do, and the better it is, the better we build our base for the full emergency process, I think. Any other points? All right. So we get a new climate emergency plan. So this can be, generally we can all, who's got a climate emergency plan? Has everyone got one? Yeah, so we're all there.
As is still a response plan.
A response, okay. Yeah, and the Maribyrnong plan is, and I think I can talk about Maribyrnong if it's good, it's really good, right? Like it's a really good plan. And it's developed by when Tiffany Harrison was an officer at Maribyrnong, and it was a community deliberative democracy process, and it's really good and really. Hey, Tiff, I've got you in the room. It's really good, and the other good thing about Tiff being the officer before you is like the notes are fantastic, right? Unbelievable. All right, and so it's really good and it's really strong. It has a real goal of not net zero by 2030. It's zero by 2030 for community and council. So does anyone have real zero goals? Who's got real zero goals? No. Who's got net? Is that everyone else? Who's got 2030 net?
Council.
We've adopted ours and got the science-based targets and
So-
we're avoiding offsetting.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And so we've got a couple of 2030s, any 2040s, any 2050s, which is still a thing. Yeah. Okay, cool. And the funny thing about, sorry. Drawdown by 2040. Fantastic. Yeah, good. We've got drawdown in Maribyrnongs too, but it's not sort of couched in that. Yeah, it's like we're drawing down and we're going to zero at the same time. So. Yeah, that's fantastic. So
Sorry,
yeah.
where are you from? Veradex. Thank you.
Yeah.
Steps actually one of the Mooney Valley, despite having got a website, there have been lights where some of our actions are pretty slow, but one of the things that we have managed to do this council term is to not limit our actions to council emissions, so expand it to community emissions. So now we've got targets around community emissions, which has been a really important distinction.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
And
And
I think similar, like half of our climate emergency action plan is dedicated to supporting community to reduce their emissions
Yeah.
towards net zero by 2030, and half is about council operations and leading by example.
Yeah, cool. And that's where we need to go. So we need to get both community and councils down there. All right, I'll get the button correct this time. Fantastic. So this is where I think we're up to. Communications priority. And were all you guys in my earlier talk today? And how did you feel that councils were going generally with not so good? So, it was Mooney Valley and two others. And even the framing, like I'm happy to release, that's going to be when I've got time. I'll type it up to a report and I'll email it to everyone somehow. But we're not quite there yet. So I think we should probably run a communications training thing for all the comms team on climate change. But yeah.
I feel like it needs to happen in their training as they're getting qualified. I don't know how you speak into that, but once they come to council, there's almost no changing. Sorry, on the video again.
Okay.
Thanks, Adrian. Look, I think there's a great opportunity for given that in 6 months. I would really like for Victorian councils to actually run a tag game, which Meredith and I know that Paragon now have utilised by others, to actually utilise that and say, let's. And we're seriously looking at how we get for communication and education for the council. So that would be something we really.
Yeah, and that's a great idea. And we booked in, we're getting our tag game done at Maribyrnong, and the tag people are out and about today. Ben and Haley are here, and we're already booked in to present to ELT. So we're doing a tag session. Probably we'll get 2 turns through it, but it's really good. It's a really good system it's designed to encourage people to action and sensitize people to the reality of what we're facing rather than desensitize people. So we need to sensitize people so they can emotionally engage with it and understand there's pathways through it. So, yep.
I help Ben and Haley facilitate, so I'm gonna find someone to help you find better candidates.
Excellent. Are you with the council or with
No,
Amble?
I occasionally facilitate around.
Yeah.
They put the game together and put three different iterations.
There we go. We've got
A little bit of everything.
excellent. And your name's?
Kirk.
Kirk. Thank you. We've got Kirk in the room, so have a chat with Kirk.
Can I just add on
Yep.
this point with communications? I think here is a great opportunity to get the nuance of it and remind your community that climate emergency and climate action has a bearing on every single portfolio and every budget dollar that you spend. So finding ways to relate it to your aged care and your elderly population, of which Queenscliff has the biggest in the state. So that's a particular one to us, but it also has a bearing on asset management. So when the argument is put that we can't afford to devote specific money to the climate emergency or our response plan this year, I think if it's made a priority, not just in terms of elevating it to the spaces it needs to be put, but also it's a nuanced discussion and it can be applied. It's the lens through which you've got to look at everything. I think that's a really important part of making it a communications priority as well.
And it comes back to that CEO buy-in, CEO ELT buy-in, I think can really influence the communications that comes from the council.
Definitely, and probably my biggest learning this year is around communications, because after we declared in 2019, I worked my hardest to embed it, to make it business as usual, and almost to hide it from the conversations that I thought might be happening in the community. And that's been effective in some levels because you get the start buy-in and you do things, but it really hit a snag last year when we did the active transport strategy, which was a big part of our climate emergency response. And we woke the beast. We were talking about things through that strategy that the communities also years back moved up and said, hey, this cancer blues and climate change. And so we had a whole lot of responses to a issue around 30 kilometre an hour in certain streets now, which were related to climate denial. But we were only doing 30 k's an hour because, so we hadn't actually taken well, and this is my fault entirely there. We hadn't actually taken a front foot. We've been sort of quietly plugging away in the background. And then all of a sudden we got this rude reminder last year that now we're going to flip that because there are still people out there who in our community, in that community supported community, still just do not believe and will use other mechanisms that we're working on, other important things, other good things to take us all back to square one. That was we were week out last year.
What's that phrase you just used? It was working the bear or something.
We worked the beast.
Beast, yeah. So just on the communications priority, I think there's another, like one, I just want to really, and as one of the earlier speakers mentioned it really clearly, you've got to talk past the 10%, right? Like they are not your audience.
Yeah.
There's a really good speaker called Anat on Shurio, someone from America. I can give you the details, but she talks about who is your target audience, and that's the people who are willing to change, right? It's not the edge, it's the middle you've got to bring across. And in terms of other beasts, just think of a beast, like there's some really obvious beasts that can come out in a climate change, a hard climate change discussion. Can anyone think of some?
Like in Frankston, the sovereign citizens.
Yeah, we got that lot. So So we're gonna park them somewhere a bit more normal, but they're gonna get upset. Yeah.
We can't make any difference. So why?
Yeah, so a basic sort of someone else's problem group, that's another group, they're about 2 in 10.
So we could.
Can I try?
Yeah,
It's the woke group.
go for work.
It's
Sorry.
it's the ones that don't want to listen by labeling it woke and will not actually consider anything because it gets put in this woke basket and then they don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, so it's politically other and then they can leave it alone. Yeah. So there's all those
All
groups.
of these and
Doesn't
Okay.
affect me.
We had with our public lighting project that we put
Yep.
cameras in every light to spy on people in their
Yeah.
bedrooms. And we could find them within 20 minutes of the city, so I didn't know if I could go to work, whether I had to stay home because I was 20 minutes away from work. But anyway, I had all of those conspiracy theories really come out.
All right, so let's park all of those guys. I'm talking like, and by normal, I just mean the bell curve type normal. Like the people in the middle of the bell curve. I'll give it to you. It's like, what happens if we have to tell a community that's living on the edge of a peri-urban environment that their houses, if they rebuild, will burn again in 5 years? Like or they're gonna flood again in 3, or they're going, that ocean will undercut those sand dunes and those houses are not there because we don't have the $20 million to hold up those cliffs anymore because those cliffs are going. So there is a genuine reaction that it's one of the, I haven't got the answer to it. I'm just sort of throwing it out there. If you've got an area that's going to be subject to frequent coastal inundation, frequent flooding events, frequent bushfire events, it's a problem for the people who live there. And it's a problem for their insurance. I'm fortunate to have a family bush block type thing with a house on it, and we stopped paying insurance because we cannot afford to pay the insurance on that place anymore.
That stopped Queenscliff applying a land subject to inundation overlay.
That's okay. So
That
it's literally,
opposition
yeah.
And well, a will to declare that there should or could be no influence on insurance prices.
Yeah, wow.
It was a significant influence from community to council in not putting that overlay.
Yeah, so we did some inundation mapping. We were able to demonstrate that about 600 to 700 homes would be underwater and in the most sort of conservative estimates of sea level rise. And we had 600 to 700 people roll up to the council and ask council very impolitely not to put anything in place that would impact their insurance or their house prices. And so this is before our time, their time, but that's the group that we need to split from. I'm only worried about my insurance and property to actually I'm going to lose everything if we don't start
To act.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
to do an optimistic flip.
Sorry.
That was that was a group called Save 600, like they organised and rallied around that cause. We then in 2019, or in the lead up to 2019, the declaration of the climate emergency had 2.5 out of our 3,500
Yes.
ratepayers sign a petition that they wanted council to pursue an ambitious climate emergency declaration and plan. So just how time
Yeah.
changes, how exposure to the right information, to the science, how shifting demographic has also influenced that has been really significant. So we haven't tested the land subject to inundation overlay yet, but it would be an interesting test case.
And the converse of all of that is when I spoke to Sunshine Coast Council up in Queensland to try and get them to declare, the speaker, so I did the doom and gloom sort of David Spratt, this is how scary climate change is. The guy who spoke after me is Donovan, I think his company's Climate Risk, not 100% sure there, and he gave a talk to the councillors and said, you will all be personally liable for any decision to allow development in the coastal inundation zone because the banks will stop loaning against those properties in 5 years. And I know why, because I'm doing the calculations for them, right? And my talk was meant to be scary, his was horrific, right? Like he scared the councillors genuinely. And we had genuine climate skeptics in the room, I'm pretty sure, right? Just saying that for, the camera. And anyway, so yeah, there is that other end. So if we're silent now, we're likely to get some consequence in the future. And And there was a really great, remember the 2003 fires in Canberra? They were burning for 3 days, making their way towards Canberra, and then the wind picked up and they raced into the suburbs, and cleverly around Canberra, they put pine trees up to about 30 feet from the back fences of people's homes, and pine trees are full of volatile oil, and huge fireballs are flying into people's homes and they're exploding, etc., etc. They started warning people, I think roughly like sort of 30 minutes or thereabouts, driving around with cars. And a lady wrote this beautiful submission to the Royal Commission, I think it was the Royal Commission, that said something like, people have a right to be afraid, right? Because the reason they didn't tell anyone was because they were afraid of making people afraid. But the point is, if you don't tell people, and something that I'm not sure if came out in the talk from the Jen West, who'd interviewed the people affected by floods, is the people who didn't have any pre-warning or understanding about the threat that could happen, they came off worse because they did not prepare, because they didn't know, right? So we're in this sort of tight bind. Anyway, move on so we can get.
And then Jane, earlier on today, around that, this is the one part of things that we deal with across the society where we actually use, we say we shouldn't talk about it.
And I think you can take the opportunity to build on the events when they happen. We've had 2 major bushfires in our area in the Adelaide Hills where I live, the Cutting Creek fires in 2019 and the Samson Flat fires in 2015. Went through the same area with the same devastation, taking homes and lives. And this year, I'm in the CFS, we had a resilience scenario, a bit like a Matthew Robinson hypothetical scenario. And it was actually going through all of the things of what happens in the lead up to that event and all of the responses and all of the misresponses and malresponses. And it was about everybody that had been through it before, engaging with the community and people who were moving into the area. And it went really well. But with the first fires at Samson Flat, it was not enough prescription burning. With the second fires, it was really, hang on, it's climate change as well, and let's just get over it. And now it's how do we personally become more resilient?
Yeah, and that's really interesting way we've been looking at resilience is talk about the event, not the probability, and how do we respond to a event type thing. So next stage, we're going to run out of time here, so we're going to race to the last ones. I think the next stage we're at is somewhere between making communications priority and community mobilisation. And I'm arguing an entirety of community mobilisation. And I'm not sure if councils by themselves with 1 to 4 officers are going to be able to do it, right? So you're going to have to partner with community organisations and get them running the, and tag, this is where I go back to tag. So for me, this solution is tag. Like we get people playing games for people in Maribyrnong, right? So they're playing tag. The climate people are playing tag. We're going to get churches playing tag. We're going to hopefully get the Western Bulldogs all in, and they'll all play tag. Western Bulldog, and so we'll hope, and then that can go out through the sporting community. So community by community, and I know Mary Beck's sort of looking at segmenting the communities and coming up with strategies for particular communities. We're all going to share as a what do they call that thing of knowledge with practice? Yeah, thank you, concussion. Sorry. I'm normally much smarter, so I really apologise. I had to avoid a pedestrian that walked out on the upfield bike track, and there was a choice of hitting them or hitting the concrete, and I went for the concrete. So
Say on this one, I
Yep.
think community mobilisation is the single most important thing you do to have a successful climate emergency response plan and deep and profound implementation. I think it gives you the council laws, the license to act, to spend money, to keep doing the work. We were really fortunate at Queen's Cliffs that it was a community-led movement that was brought to council, and they advocated to the council to adopt the declaration and, sorry, I'm using my semantics wrong, acknowledge the emergency and then adopt a plan. But it has been because council develops the plan in partnership with community, and the roles for community and council or other stakeholders have been really clearly prescribed, that I think we've, by and large, had a really successful and been able to have continual buy-in on an ambitious plan. So I think it is the single most important thing in this.
I tend to agree, and I think one of the biggest things we did after we prepared our climate emergency response plan was actually spent about 3 months doing memorandum of understanding with that community group. What because it was going back to council saying, okay, we've done this now. So now we're gonna have to make an actual commitment to a community group that's gonna push us and drive us. And that was probably, to your point, if we didn't have that, things would have got reprioritised. Things would have drifted off, but we've got this community now that we made a commitment to that push us.
Couple of quick questions, yeah.
One of the issues that we have, we've got a number of councillors who, despite the declaration of resistance to action, and we have a very strong community group, very mobilised. But they're often, the argument used by councillors often against the group is that they're same old voices and minority of the community, and they don't speak to everyone, and we need to hear from other people. Have you got a suggestion as to how,
Can I respond? Because that's exactly what's happening at Knox. We had a strong movement prior to the 2020 elections. We got a lot of change early and then the foot off the pedal. And that group's still engaged, but they're effectively, great, council's doing what we've asked them to do, let's go. And now that void is opening up the other voices where we've got 165,000 in Knox. We had 3,000 on the signatures on the petition. There's a big void of these kind of voices that are coming up, and the ones against stronger action are latching on to those voices. Now, I think what we've talked about earlier is, you touched on it, engaging sporting groups, engaging the other voices, engaging, speaking to them around how it's going to impact them or what actions they can take that might make their running costs cheaper or whatever it is, finding a different way of telling the story so that you get the other voices engaged. I know we haven't got long to go on about it, so I'll leave it there.
I'll add one point. The advantage that we have as a sector is we have legislation that says we need to do something about it. So there may be only small books.
It's minimal legislation though. It's
But you can use it. You can use it to your advantage.
Sorry,
Yeah.
because Jude mentioned a good point about the benefit of what a community organisation can do for community literacy about climate action. And so part of what QCAN did early, and I think it's taken a pause because of resourcing and volunteers in the community, that's always going to be a challenge, but they had a community leaders forum. So every couple of months, this forum of sports club presidents, club members, whoever was, trader group would come and participate and understand how the plan related to them, how it could save them money, how it could benefit their membership, how it could help them apply for a grant for better lighting, solar powered lighting from the federal government. Is he mimicking me?
No.
Anyway, that's been really effective. And I think the broader the literacy of the community, the less you're going to get the argument that this is a little group who shouldn't have the influence on council that they do.
I've literally got 1 minute left. So I'm just going to quickly go through a couple of slides and then people can choose whether they're going to give up on lunch. Remember, it is an emergency. No, afternoon tea, whatever it is. Sorry. Anyway, all right. So just remember this one here. What?
Yeah.
Oh, no, 5 minutes, really? Wow, okay.
You've got
Okay.
7 minutes.
Okay. All right, we'll get to you. We will get to you. All right, just a quick. So this is the second community mobilisation because most councils, unless you are, because you're Poppy, most councils just, sorry, any Yarra people here, don't worry. This is the second community mobilisation. This is the one to lead up to the full emergency mobilisation, right? So it's actually a second, and council's going to support it by raising education levels and awareness levels in community, okay? All right, and then, if we're going to get, and this is the point that you just made, was that if we don't have that community support, the councillors will not be confident to tell the CEO to do it, right? Yes. Even then.
I feel like this is gonna be a bit of therapy for me, but
You've got 1 minute.
yeah, Trent and I've been through, this real roller coaster, getting really up there with the climate emergency and then getting a new council elected in 2020 where, we had things like, well, climate emergency was last year, and now we need to other things this year from the council group.
Big voice.
Sorry,
Yeah.
and active transport, so that was a big thing for me, 18% of emissions are from traffic. But the council does not have a group that will support that, there's 5 that won't support it. And so then I was at a meeting last week where a staff member was talking about, oh, well, we can't take away one car park because, people don't like that. And I was just thinking the way that what else can they do, you know, when there's no enabling level? at our
Yes,
level?
and that's the
What else
point.
can
You,
they
you
do?
have to get, so
So,
you ultimately doesn't work unless we've got a majority of councillors on side,
And,
right?
and the solution is we're 6 months out, tap on as many people as on the shoulder as you can that are aligned with what you're trying to do. Or
Alright.
actually aligned with understanding it's an emergency.
And I'll quickly get through the slides and then we'll flick to the couple of questions. Yeah. And all right. So in the original idea, I had 7, 8, 9 as separate points. So they're just really one point, right? So they're the actual emergency mobilisation sort of get to go. So you do a whole of council review, you do an emergency budgeting exercise. So there's a budgeting exercise you do at councils, you put all budget, it's called zero budgeting, and you justify everything. But instead of literally saying we're going to spend you know, 100,000 on designing a new blah, we're going to put 100,000 into something climate, right? Like you're going to do it as if it's an emergency. If you got to that point, once you've got that councillor support, and then finally, you know, the whole point of it all, and I just want to bring that is that we're trying to get back to getting to negative. And what I was really, you know, that was the original phrasing, is really about driving state and federal government response, right? From getting the council to take that leadership position, stepping up our leadership positions from where all they, well, they're already better than state governments almost in every council, right? So it's stepping it up again. And I'm not sure, you know, it's adopting we're going to go for the 3 R's rather than net zero or zero. Does that, so the next thing is the 3 R's. So it's, you know, repair, reverse, and reflect, or whatever the other one was. So, so that's where we're going, and we're at sort of 5 and 6. That's where we are. And unless some council, Queenscliff, I'm not looking at anyone, just want to jump on in there and take the lead, be welcome. You'll be out there for alone for a little while, but eventually someone will copy, right, around the world.
You know,
Yeah.
I just say one
Yeah.
thing. We've spoken about council elections, but there will be a federal election probably in November, but sometime in the next, well, near future. We have a fantastic body called ELGA that every year gets to sit down with the Prime Minister and speak to the Commonwealth Government about what's important to the sector. So one of the big advocacy pieces that I'm trying to push is we have these things called roads to recovery and bridging, those programs where we pretty much get money to focus on one thing. If we were going to, as a sector, do some advocacy, we should advocate to the federal government to give us a specific grant program for climate emergency to help them meet their target. And I would encourage all the councillors in the room to take that away and work on that.
And in Queensland, they call it building back better because they've been smashed so many times. They built it back the same and it broke again.
Betterment, I
yeah.
think they talk about.
Yeah.
Thanks. I was just going to say, when you're talking about use tag as a community communication tool, the other thing is, if you haven't done it as an environmental focus, folks, talk to your emergency planning functions and to your local volunteer emergency organizations. They all have liaison things that they're trying to do community outreach with, and they do care about the environment. I'm SES, I care when it ends and the wind gets windy. CFA cares about backburning and things get hot. They care about environmental change very much as a matter of life and death personally, and long term it's going to change how our organizations need to work. So talk to them, give them a platform, work with them. Some of them may not have liaison people because they may be too small in your local councils. Help them, give them the platform to do that. They'll go out and want to talk. So good emotive messaging too.
Thank you.
And so just on communications priority and community mobilisation, and I think it's really difficult sometimes to get in the mobilisation, particularly because of any. The rich don't want to know about it. The poor don't have the ability to do it. One thing we don't have in terms of communications priority and community mobilisation, probably most people aren't as old as I am, because I'm not that old, but remember the Wally, don't be a Wally with water hands. I think what we really need to see, like I see state government hands about, you know, I'll support your super, but that's all it is. What we really need is to see if some season is we can, like,
Yeah, and
what are the 5 priorities we can take and start to make it from the community messages come to the state government. That alone would actually support us mobilizing the community as well as getting the right.
Yeah.
So
And-
there's nothing else that you did. at a state level, except try and get them to be state level. I'm up with that. That would be right.
And that's why like some things in South Australia work better because the state
Yeah.
government is not as dependent on fossil fuels and they're not out there expanding the gas industry in the South Australia, etc. But remember the 155 water, the oldies in the room, the 155 water target thing? Like that just took Brax, the Premier of Victoria, to stand up, say, hi everyone, we're in a bit of an emergency. We all need you to, cut your water use. And literally, and I mean this quite seriously, old people were killing themselves because they were 85 years old. They would shower with a bucket, carry a like 5-6 litre bucket of water and slip on the tiles, right? And then break their hip and not make it. So people, yeah, so sorry, positive thing to talk on, but the point being is all it took was leadership, okay? And so we can do it. We're sort of at 5 and 6. Next year when we all come back together, let's have number 5 in the belt, under the belt. We're all got climate emergency on the front page of our website, something like that. And then we'll all be working on 6 and hopefully someone's gone to 7 and I'm not looking at anyone. Yeah. All right. Thank our guests. And thank all yourselves because you are the true heroes. Sorry, I've just been watching Homelander. So thanks everyone for coming. And I think are we up to break?
Afternoon tea.
Afternoon tea. All right.
Yeah, until 3:50. Until 3:44.
Thanks, MC.